stared at the message on his screen for the third time. The words looked the same each time he read them, but they still did not make complete sense. The consortium wanted humans to participate in something called the Universal Strength Calibration Project. Had heard of them before. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were scientists who spent their time studying every species they could find. The message was polite and professional. It explained that they were creating a database of physical capabilities for all known species. The information would help create better medical treatments and safety standards across the galaxy. It would make workplaces safer and equipment more reliable. At least, that was what the message said. Back in his chair aboard the human exploration vessel Horizon, his ship was small compared to most alien vessels, but it was home. He had been commanding the Horizon for 3 years now, exploring the edges of known space and making contact with new species when possible. Humans had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago, and they were still the newcomers. Most alien species treated humans like children who had just learned to walk. The invitation felt different, though. They were offering humans a chance to be part of something official, something important. Knew that Earth Command would want him to accept. Any opportunity to prove that humans belonged in the galaxy was worth taking. Called his senior officers to the bridge. Lieutenant Jake arrived first. Jake was a career military man with short brown hair and calm eyes that never seemed worried about anything. He had served under for 2 years and had never complained once, even during the worst situation. Well, Hayes came next. She was a combat engineer with dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail, had a talent for fixing anything mechanical, and a sense of humor that kept the crew relaxed during long missions. She looked at with curiosity. Next to arrive was Dr. Helen Carter. She was not military, but she served aboard the Horizon as their medical officer and research specialist. Helen had joined the crew because she wanted to study alien biology firsthand. She was always asking questions and taking notes about everything he saw. Them the message. Jake read it carefully while scanned it quickly. Helen's eyes lit up with interest before she even finished reading. Consortium, Helen said. They are famous in scientific circles. Their research on biological limits is considered the best in the galaxy. What do they want from us? Asked. Want to test our physical capabilities, said. Strength, endurance, durability. They claim it is for safety standards and medical reasons. Frowned slightly. You think there is more to it. Always think there is more to it, admitted. But Earth Command will want us to participate. This is a chance to show other species what humans can do. Or would the testing happen? Helen asked. Mission Apex, it is in neutral space about 2 weeks from our current position. And so we are going to show some aliens how strong humans really are. If Earth Command approves, said, I am sending them the request now. We'll come back within 6 hours. Earth Command was enthusiastic about the opportunity. They ordered to select a small team and proceed to Station Apex immediately. The message included the usual reminders about representing humanity well and maintaining diplomatic relations. Jake and Helen for the team. They were his most reliable people, and each brought different skills. Jake was strong and disciplined, was tough and adaptable. Helen could explain the science behind whatever happened. To stay in Apex took 13 days. During that time, Helen researched everything she could find about the and their testing methods. She learned that they had tested over 300 species so far. Each test followed the same pattern. The species would perform standardized physical tasks while machines measured their output. The data would be analyzed and added to the universal database. Seems very routine, Helen told the others during dinner one night. They have tested everyone from the tiny to the massive. They have never reported any problems or surprises. We will be the first surprise, said. Doubt it, Jake replied. We are just humans, average size, average strength. We are not special compared to most species out there. Helen looked thoughtful but said nothing. An Apex appeared in there on the 13th day. It was enormous, a wheel-shaped structure spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Lights dotted its surface like stars, and ships of various designs moved around it like insects around a lamp. The Horizon to a docking port. A voice came through their communication system, speaking in perfect English through a translation device. The voice welcomed them and provided docking instructions. And gathered their gear and prepared to disembark, reminded them to be professional and cooperative. They were representing all of humanity, and first impressions mattered. The port opened into a wide corridor filled with beings from different species. Saw tall, thin creatures with 2 main joints. He saw short, round beings covered in fur. He saw species he recognized from Earth databases, and several he had never seen before. All of them were waiting for their turn in the testing chamber. Approached the human team. She was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Her movements were precise and controlled. She wore a white coat that marked her as a scientist. Enter, she said, her voice coming from a small device attached to her coat. I am Doctor. Welcome to Station Apex. We are pleased that humanity has chosen to participate in our project. Her hand, nodding that her grip was weak by human standards. Thank you for inviting us, Doctor. My team is ready to begin whenever you are. Her eyes moved over Jake and Helen. Her expression was hard to read, but thought he saw something like curiosity in her face. Excellent, she said. Please follow me. I will show you our facility and explain the testing procedures. Through several quarters, each one filled with sophisticated equipment. Doctor explained as they went. The testing chambers were designed to adapt to any species. The machines could measure forces ranging from the weakest to the strongest. Safety protocols would protect the test subjects from harm. I've tested over 300 species, Doctor said with obvious pride. Our database is the most complete record of biological capabilities in the galaxy. The information has already helped improve safety standards on thousands of worlds. How long does the testing usually take? Helen asked. Most species, approximately 4 hours. We begin with basic assessments to establish a baseline, then gradually increase the difficulty until we find the subject's maximum capability. Entered a large room filled with observation equipment. Through a transparent wall, they could see the testing chamber itself. It was a huge space with white walls and floors. Various machines lined the walls, and several platforms rose from the floor. This is where we will conduct the tests, Doctor said. Who would like to go first? Step forward, I will. Nod. She led Jake to a door that opened into the testing chamber. The rest of the team moved to the observation room where they could watch through the transparent wall. Next to Helen watching as Jake entered the chamber. The lieutenant looked small in the huge space, but he showed no signs of nervousness. He simply waited for instruction. Activated her equipment. Screens lit up around the observation room, displaying data that did not fully understand. Other scientists gathered around, watching their monitors with professional interest. We'll begin with a simple lifting test, Doctor announced. The machine will present a weight bar. Lieutenant will lift it, and we will measure the force generated. Foam rose from the floor in front of Jake. On it sat a metal bar with grips on each end. Jake approached it, bent his knees, and gripped the bar with both hands. You may begin when ready, Doctor said. Lifted the bar, it came up smoothly. He held it at shoulder height, then lowered it back to the platform. The screens, numbers scrolled past, updating rapidly. Doctor's expression did not change, but some of the other scientists exchanged glances. Increase weight by standard increment, Doctor ordered. Glowed briefly, and Jake lifted it again. Then again, then again. Each time he showed the same controlled movement, the same steady breathing. Began to notice something, though. The numbers on the screens kept climbing higher than he expected. The scientists were leaning closer to their monitors now. Did the tent lift? Doctor paused the test. She ran her fingers over her control panel, checking something. Is there a problem? Asked. Problem, Doctor said, but her voice sounded uncertain. The equipment is functioning correctly. It is just that Lieutenant's baseline is higher than we anticipated. How much higher? Helen asked. Doctor hesitated. Approximately 40% above our projected human baseline. Something shifted in the room. The other were now watching Doctor instead of there. The weight on the bar continued to increase. Jake kept lifting it over and over with the same steady rhythm. Watched the numbers climb on the screens around the observation room. The other scientists had stopped pretending to work on their own tasks. They were all watching now. Increased the weight again. The bar should have been heavy enough to challenge Jake by now, at least according to the baseline projection displayed on one of the screens. But Jake lifted it without any visible strain. His breathing remained even. His movement stayed controlled. "It is unusual," one of the scientists said quietly. Doctor did not respond. She increased the weight again and again. The numbers on the screen climbed past the human baseline, past what they had calculated as the human maximum, and kept going. Only after the 20th lift, Jake lowered the bar and rolled his shoulders. "Should I keep going?" he called out. She seemed to shake herself out of her thoughts. "No, that is sufficient for the baseline test. Please proceed to the next station." Move to a different part of the chamber where another machine waited. This one looked like a frame with handles attached to cables. Doctor explained through the speaker system that this was an endurance test. Jake would grip the handles and hold a specific position while the machine gradually increased the rhythm. Species maintain the position for 8 to 12 minutes, Doctor said. When you can no longer hold the position, simply release the handles. Gripped the handles and pulled them to chest level. His arms formed right angles at the elbows, and his feet were planted firmly on the floor. The machine activated with a soft hum. Up to the observation window. "How long do you think he will last?" "Longer than they expect," Helen said quietly. It was right. 8 minutes passed, then 12, then 15. Jake's face showed concentration but not strain. At 20 minutes, Doctor checked her equipment again, clearly expecting a malfunction. The equipment was working perfectly. 25 minutes, Jake started talking. "Hey, Commander, what are we having for dinner tonight? I'm hoping for something other than the dried rations." Laughed. Here was Jake, holding a position that should have exhausted him 20 minutes ago, casually discussing meal plans. "Can check what the station has available," called back. "But I could use some real food after this." Scientists were now gathered in a tight group around Doctor's station. They spoke in their own language, and their translator devices buzzed with fragments of conversation that could not quite hear. He caught words like impossible and recalibrate and error. 30 minutes, Doctor finally stopped the test. "That is sufficient, Lieutenant. You may release the handles." Let go and shook out his arms. "That was a good workout. What is next?" Her did not answer immediately. She was staring at her screens with an expression that could only describe as confused. Finally, she looked up through the observation window. "Commander, I need to speak with you privately." Put her to a small offset hat to the observation room. Helen came with him, and Doctor did not object. The scientist closed the door and stood silent for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. "People are not what we expected," she said finally. "What did you expect?" I asked. "These are from a Category 7 planet. High gravity, yes, but not extreme. Variable climate, significant danger from predators and natural disasters, but nothing exceptional. Based on these factors, our models predicted human strength and endurance would fall within a specific range. You should be comparable to the or perhaps the. Instead, Lieutenant's results are close." Leaned forward with interest. "They are much larger than humans, and they evolved on a high-gravity world with fewer environmental dangers." The doctor said, "Which is why your results do not make sense. Mass-strength ratio should follow predictable curves. Endurance should correlate with metabolic efficiency. But Lieutenant breaks these models. The numbers suggest he should not be able to do what he just did." "But your models are wrong," said Harden. "My models have successfully predicted the capabilities of over 300 species. They are based on decades of research and tested against thousands of data points. They are not wrong." "Maybe humans are just different," Helen argued. "Everything is different in its own way," Doctor replied. "But everything still follows the same basic biological rules. Energy has limits. Tissue has breaking points. There are mathematical certainties that govern what living things can and cannot." Crossed his arms. "So what do you want to do?" "I want to continue the testing. I want to use the advanced protocols designed for high-capability species like the. I need to find where your people fit in the universal model." "And if we do not fit?" Helen asked quietly. Doctor met her eyes. "Everything fits. We just need more data." Turned to the observation room. Doctor announced that they would be moving to advanced testing protocols. The other scientists nodded, though some of them looked uncertain. Her turn in the chamber next. Her test involved a different type of endurance challenge. She had to maintain pressure against a hydraulic platform that would slowly increase its resistance. The test measured both strength and the ability to sustain effort over time. Longer than Jake had. At 40 minutes, she was still pulling against the platform, and she had started chatting with Helen about a book they had both read. The scientist had stopped looking confused and started looking concerned. When they finished her test, Doctor called for a break. The human team was escorted to a waiting area with comfortable chairs and refreshments. Noticed that the refreshments were all from Earth, probably researched and prepared specifically for human biology. "This is going well, right?" asked, pouring herself some water. "You're scared," Helen said simply. Raised an eyebrow. "Scared of what?" "What we represent. They have built their careers on the idea that biological capabilities can be predicted and categorized. We are breaking their predictions, which means we are breaking their understanding of how life works." And slowly, "I noticed Doctor seems more interested in proving her models right than in actually learning about humans." "You blame her?" Helen asked. "Imagine spending your entire life studying something, building theories and models that everyone respects, and then a new species shows up and none of your work applies to them. It would be devastating." Sat in silence for a moment, then Doctor returned with several other scientists. She looked determined now, not confused. "Would like to proceed with the extreme testing protocols," she announced. Extreme stood up. "What does that mean?" "Tests are designed to find absolute maximum capability. They are normally reserved for the strongest species in the galaxy, beings like thee or the extinct. We have never had to use them before on a species from a Category 7 world." "Are they safe?" demanded. "Completely safe. The equipment has multiple safety overrides. If it detects any risk of serious injury, it will automatically shut down." And step forward. "Those safety overrides are calibrated based on your models of biological limits, correct?" Doctor paused. "Yes. We have already established that humans do not fit your models. So how do you know the safety systems will work correctly for us?" "The fundamental principles remain the same. Tissue tears at certain stress levels. Bones break under specific forces. These are physical constants that apply to all organic life." "I will do it," Jake said. Everyone turned to look at him. He stood up and faced Doctor calmly. "These tests will give you the data you need. I will do them. But I want Commander and Dr. Carter in the observation room watching everything." Doctor nodded. "Of course." Turned to the testing chamber. This time, Jake was directed to a different section of the room that had not noticed before. It was more heavily reinforced, with thicker walls and additional equipment built into the floor and ceiling. Foam rose from the floor. It was larger than the previous one, and it had what looked like industrial clamps attached to its surface. The whole setup looked more like construction equipment than scientific instruments. The maximum force assessment, Doctor explained. The platform will present increasing weight until you can no longer lift it. The test will automatically stop when you reach your maximum or when the safety systems detect excessive stress. Approached the platform and examined the grips. They were larger than the previous ones, designed for beings bigger than humans. He adjusted his stance to compensate. Get one ready, Doctor said. Grip the handle, set his feet, and lift. The platform rose smoothly. The weight increased. He lifted again and again. The numbers on the screens, they climbed rapidly now, passing through ranges marked for various species. Past the human maximum that Doctor's models had predicted. Numbers entered the range. Jake was still lifting. His breathing had increased and sweat appeared on his face, but his form remained solid. Nothing changed. Jake shifted his position slightly. He was not just using his arms now. His whole body was involved in the lift, legs drying up, core tight, shoulders engaged. It was not just strength anymore. It was technique, leverage, and the full integration of his entire physical system. Form kept rising. The numbers kept climbing. And in the observation room, Doctor stared at her screens with an expression that had never seen before on any face, alien or human. It was not confusion anymore. It was not concern. It was fear of something fundamental being proven wrong. Form passed the maximum. It passed the theoretical maximum. And Jake was still lifting, not because he was trying to break records, but simply because he had not been told to stop yet. Because giving up was not something that occurred to him. Grew louder. It was not the clean hum of working machinery. It was something organic and wrong, like bones grinding together or metal tearing. Pressed close to the observation window, his hands flat against the transparent surface. Stop the test, he said. Did not respond. Her eyes were fixed on her screens, and her hands moved rapidly across her controls. Numbers scrolled past faster than could read them. Every few seconds, a new warning appeared on one of the monitors, but Doctor dismissed them with quick gesture. Stop the test now, repeated louder this time. Few protocols are engaged, she said without looking up. If there is real danger, the system will stop automatically. Testing chamber, Jake continued to lift. His face was red now and veins stood out on his neck and arms, but his expression was not one of pain or desperation. It was pure concentration. He had entered what Helen would later explain as a flow state, where conscious thought faded and the body operated on instinct alone. Move to stand next to. Those safety protocols are calibrated wrong. They are designed for species that have hard biological limits. Humans do not work that way. Do you mean? Asked from behind them. Species hit a wall when they reach their maximum capability. Their bodies have a clear stopping point built into their biology. It is an efficiency measure, a waste energy building capacity you will never need. But humans evolved differently. Earth never let us specialize. We needed excess capacity for everything because we never knew what would come next. The sound grew worse. One of the scientists said something urgent in their language. Doctor snapped a response, but she finally reached for the emergency stop control. Too late. The platform Jake was lifting began to bend. Not slowly, but with a sudden sharp motion that sent alerts screaming across every monitor in the observation room. The hydraulic systems that controlled the weight could not handle the force being applied to them. They were designed for the strongest species in the galaxy, but those species knew when to stop. They had limits built into their evolution. Did not have those limits, or more accurately, his limits were so far beyond normal that the equipment simply could not reach them. He was not trying to break the machine. He was just doing what millions of years of evolution on Earth had programmed into every human. When something pushed against him, he pushed back. When he was challenged, he refused to quit. It was not courage or determination. It was just what humans did. Form cracked with a sound like thunder. Safety fields activated immediately, creating shimmering barriers between the testing chamber and the observation room. Alarms filled the air with urgent sounds. All main systems began emergency shutdown procedures. Damage was already done. The platform split down the middle, and the hydraulic systems that controlled it flowed outward in sprays of pressurized fluid. The industrial clamps broke free from their mountings and crashed to the floor. The weight indicators on the walls flickered and went dark. Finally stopped, not because he had reached his limit, but because there was nothing left to push against. He stood in the center of the wrecked testing chamber, chest heaving, hands still raised in the lifting position. Around him, expensive scientific equipment worth more than a small ship lay in pieces. Arms cut off suddenly, leaving behind a silence that felt even louder. Doctor stood frozen at her control station, staring through the observation window at the destruction. Her hands trembled slightly. Get him out of there, ordered. Already moving toward the door, she sailed through the airlock and ran into the testing chamber. Jake saw her coming and lowered his arms finally. He looked around at the wreckage with an expression of surprise. Did I do that? He asked. You did that, said. She grabbed his arm and checked him over quickly. You hurt. I'm fine, just tired. Jake looked down at his hands, flexing his fingers. I thought the weight would keep increasing. I was waiting for it to get really heavy. But it was not a heavy sound. Jake, you just broke the most advanced testing equipment in the galaxy. I think it was plenty heavy. In the observation room, more had arrived. They spoke in rapid, urgent tones. Doctor finally turned away from the window and faced. Her expression was blank, as if her mind was somewhere else entirely. It should not have been possible, she said quietly. But it happened, Helen replied. That does not work. The biological models do not allow for that level of force generation from a being of Lieutenant's mass. The energy requirements alone exceed what his body should be able to produce. Your models are incomplete, said, trying to keep his voice calm. Station Apex Security would be here soon, and he needed to understand what had just happened before things got worse. Complete, Doctor's voice rose slightly. My models predicted the capabilities of the within 2% accuracy. They predicted the from file records alone. They have been tested against every known species. They are not incomplete. They are comprehensive. Except for humans, Helen said. Turned to her. Your species does not make sense. You are not large enough to generate that force. You are not efficient enough to sustain that effort. Your models are not dense enough. Your skeletal structure is not reinforced enough. According to everything we know about biology, what Lieutenant just did was impossible. Yet he did it, Helen said calmly, which means your understanding of biology has a gap. What gap? What am I missing? Moved to one of the screens that still displayed data from before the equipment failed. She pointed at a series of curves that showed Jake's performance over time. This every other species you have tested shows a predictable curve. Their performance increased steadily until they reach their maximum, and then it plateaus. But Jake's curve is different. He started below his actual capability. He was operating in what we would call a comfortable range, but when the weight kept increasing, his performance did not just climb steadily. It spiked. He accessed reserves that should not have been immediately. To study the data, that would require some kind of secondary system, a reserve capacity held back from normal use. Humans do not operate at full capability most of the time. We keep power in reserve automatically. It is not conscious. It is built into how our bodies work. Earth was unpredictable, so we evolved to always have something left over. You never knew when you would need it. It is wasteful, one of the other scientists said. Evolution eliminates waste. Evolution eliminates waste in stable environments, Helen countered. Earth was never stable. Ice ages, meteor impacts, volcanic eruptions, shifting continents, changing climates. Humans who specialized in one thing died. Humans who kept reserves and stayed adaptable survived. The door opened and several beings in security uniforms entered. They looked like tall and heavily built with rough gray skin. The lead officer approached. "Enter, we need to ask you and your team to remain in a secure area while we assess the situation." "Are we under arrest?" asked. "Sir, this is standard procedure after a major equipment failure. We need to ensure the safety of all station personnel and determine what happened." He gestured for Jake and to join him. The security team escorted all 3 humans to a comfortable waiting room near the docking bay. Helen went with them, though the security officer seemed uncertain about whether she should be considered part of the test team or the observation team. The door closed, leaving them alone in the room, let out a long breath. "Oh, that could have gone better." Sat down heavily in one of the chairs. "I'm sorry, Commander. I did not mean to break everything." "You did not. You were just following instructions," paced the small room. "The problem is what that means." "What does it mean?" Jake asked. Answered. "It means we just shattered the scientific foundation that the entire galaxy used to understand biology. It will report what happened. Other species will want to verify the results, and everyone will realize that humans are not like other species." "Is that bad?" asked. "And some species might see us as valuable, strong workers, tough soldiers, persistent explorers, but others might see us as threats. If we can break their testing equipment, what else can we break? Their weapons, their ships, their control." Packing. "We need to contact Earth Command. They need to know what happened before anyone else reports it." It's the room's communication terminal to send an encrypted message to the horizon. His second officer confirmed receipt and promised to relay it to Earth immediately. Waited in the room for 3 hours. Security brought them food and water, which was considered. No one came to question them. No one explained what was happening. They were simply left alone with their thoughts. Spent the time doing light exercise, trying to work the stiffness out of his muscles. Examined the room's construction with professional interest. Helen took notes on her personal tablet, recording everything she could remember about the test results. Think through their options. The best case scenario was that they would blow over quickly. It would adjust their models, and humans would be classified as an unusual but manageable species. The worst case scenario was that this incident would trigger fear and spin across the galaxy. Humans would be restricted, monitored, maybe even quarantined on their own worlds. The door opened. Doctor entered alone, and she looked exhausted. The precision and control she had shown earlier were gone. She moved slowly as if every step required thought. "Oh, you an apology?" she said to. "For what?" "Pushing the test too far. The safety protocols failed because I calibrated them based on incomplete data. Lieutenant could have been seriously injured, and it would have been my fault." "But I was not injured," Jake said. "I am fine." Doctor looked at him. "Yes, you are fine. You destroyed equipment designed to test the strongest beings in the galaxy, and you are fine. That is the problem." "Do not understand," Jake said. "I spent my entire career believing that the universe was orderly, that biology followed rules, that with enough data and good enough models, we could predict and understand everything. And then you lifted that platform and broke everything I thought I knew." Stood up. "Doctor, what you learned today is not that your models are wrong. You learned that they are incomplete. The universe is still orderly. Biology still follows rules, but the rules are bigger and more complex than you thought. That is not failure, that is discovery." Her managed a tired smile. "You are kind to say so, but the damage is done. The consortium will review my work. Other scientists will question my methods, and worst of all, they will be right to do so." "What happens now?" asked. "Now the galaxy learns that humans are different. The data from today's test is already being analyzed by every major scientific institution. By tomorrow, everyone will know, and after that," she shook her head. "I honestly do not know, but I expect that humanity's relationship with the rest of the galaxy is about to change in ways none of us can predict." Left them alone again, looked at his team. Jake seemed unbothered by the whole situation, looked thoughtful. Helen looked worried. "It's right," Helen said quietly. "Everything just changed. We just showed the galaxy that humans do not fit into their understanding of how life works. Some will be fascinated, some will be frightened, but none of them will ever see us the same way again." Down and closed his eyes. Somewhere above them in the station's communication center, 3 days after the incident at Station Apex, stood in a conference room aboard the horizon and watched as the galaxy fell apart around them. Not literally, but close enough. Main screen displayed news feeds from a dozen different sources. Every major network was covering the story. Human breaks testing equipment. New species exceeds all known limits. Scientists question fundamental theories. The headlines varied, but the message was the same. Humanity was different, and different meant dangerous. Wells appeared on the communication screen. She was superior officer and one of the few people at Earth Command who understood diplomacy as well as military strategy. Her expression was carefully neutral, which meant she was worried. "Give me the situation, Commander," she said. Stood at the news feeds. "The situation is that we are now the most talked about species in the galaxy, and not in a good way. I've been reading the reports. The Galactic Science Council called an emergency session. Doctor, for 6 hours. The data from your tests has been requested by 37 different governments." "What are they saying?" "That they need to update safety standards and equipment specifications to account for human capabilities." "Unofficially?" Sighed. "They are scared. The models have been the foundation of galactic civilization for decades. Those models govern everything from workplace regulation to military hardware to medical treatments. And you just proved those models are incomplete." "He did not mean to," said. "Does not matter. The implications are what matter. If humans can exceed the theoretical maximum strength by such a large margin, what else can they do? Can humans survive radiation levels that would kill other species? Can humans operate in extreme temperatures? Can humans recover from injuries that would be fatal to us? Can we?" asked. "Do not know, but now everyone is asking those questions, and they are not asking them out of scientific curiosity. They are asking them because they need to know if humans are a threat." His jaw tight. "We are not a threat. We are just people trying to find our place in the galaxy." You know that, but fear is not rational. The hegemony has already issued a formal challenge. They want their own tests to verify the data. The collective is calling for humans to be studied more extensively before we are allowed unrestricted travel. The Merchant Guild is worried about insurance rates for human crews. What does Earth Command want me to do?" It's quiet for a moment. "They want you to come home, bring your team back to Earth, and let the diplomatic corps handle this. And if I refuse, you will be disobeying direct orders, and I will have to relieve you of command. But between you and me, I understand why you might want to stay out there. Running away makes us look guilty." Slowly, "What if we offered to cooperate? Full transparency, additional tests under controlled conditions, whatever they need to feel secure." Command already made that offer. The response was mixed. Some species appreciated the gesture. Others saw it as admission that we have something to hide. Communication screen blinked, and another face appeared next to. It was Ambassador Lee, Earth's primary representative to the Galactic Council. She looked exhausted. "I need you to understand something. In the past 72 hours, I have had 43 separate meetings with various species representatives. Every single one of them asked me the same question. How strong are humans really?" "And what did you tell them?" asked. "Told them the truth, that we do not fully know, that humans have high variability, that our evolution on Earth created a species adapted for persistence and adaptability rather than specialization. But that is not the answer they want." "What answer did they want?" Wanted me to give them a number, a maximum, a limit, something they could put into their database and feel safe about, but I could not give them that because we do not have it. And who had been listening quietly stepped forward. Ambassador Lee, may I ask a question? Of course, Dr. Carter. Has anyone asked why humans are this way? Not how strong we are, but why evolution made us this way. Mr. Lee smiled grimly. A few have. He in particular found your theory about Earth's unpredictability very interesting, but most species are not interested in the why. They are only interested in the threats. Crossed his arms. So what happened now? Wait, the Galactic Council is reviewing the data. They will make a decision about how to categorize humanity within their systems. That decision will affect everything from trade agreements to military alliances to simple travel permissions. How long will that take? Probably months. In the meantime, I recommend you keep a low profile. No more strength demonstrations, no more testing. Just routine exploration missions far from populated areas. Communication ended, turned to find his entire senior staff assembled in the conference room. They had all been listening. Jake looked calm as always, looked angry. Helen looked thoughtful. Well, that was depressing, said. We just became the galaxy's problem children. Became proof that the galaxy does not understand everything, Helen corrected. There is a difference. Does it matter? They are scared of us either way. Matters because fear based on ignorance can be fixed with information. Fear based on actual threat cannot. Finally spoke up. Are we actually a threat, though? I mean, yes, I broke the equipment, but I was not trying to hurt anyone. I was just doing what they asked. It's exactly why they're scared, Helen said. You were not even trying and you still exceeded everything they thought was possible. They are imagining what humans could do if we were actually trying, if we were angry or desperate or fighting for our lives. To the window and looked out at the stars. Station Apex was visible in the distance, a wheel of light slowly spinning against the darkness. Joined the exploration service because I wanted to see the galaxy, he said quietly. I wanted to meet other species and learn about their cultures. I thought humans could be part of something bigger than ourselves, but now I am starting to wonder if we are just too different. It does not mean incompatible, Helen said. Look at them, they are smaller than most species and not physically impressive at all, but they are respected because they bring something unique to the galactic community. Philosophy, art, perspective. Humans can do the same. Except they never scared anyone, pointed out. That is exactly what we need to do, Jake said. Everyone turned to look at him. Maybe we need to show the galaxy what we can do with our strength, not breaking things but helping building. And back from the window, what do you mean? About it, Commander. Everyone is scared because they are imagining worst-case scenarios. Humans as soldiers, humans as conquerors, humans as threats. But what if we show them a different possibility? Humans as rescue workers, humans as builders, humans doing jobs that other species cannot do because they are not strong enough or tough enough. His eyes lit up. He's right. We need to change the narrative. Right now, the story is about what humans could do to others. We need to make it about what humans can do for others. Slowly, I like it, but how do we make that happen? Or anyone could answer, an alarm sounded. Not a combat alarm, but a priority communication alert. Moved to the console and accepted the incoming message. It was from Station Apex, but not from Doctor. The face on the screen belonged to Station Commander, who ran the facility's operations. We have an emergency situation. Cargo transport suffered a catastrophic engine failure in high-gravity orbit around the nearby plant. The ship is trapped in a decaying orbit. Our recovery valves cannot operate in those gravity conditions. The crew will die if we cannot extract them within 4 hours. Something cold settled in his stomach. How many crew members? 3 representing 4 different species. We are attempting other rescue options, but none of them will work in time. Commander paused. Commander, I understand this is a difficult request given recent events, but your ship's engines are rated for high-gravity operations, and your crew can withstand the physical stress that would incapacitate our rescue team. Want us to attempt the rescue, said. I know I have no right to ask. I know your government has advised you to avoid high-profile situations, but 23 beings will die if someone does not help them, and you are the only ones who can. Did his team? Jake met his eyes and nodded, was already moving toward the door. Helen gave him a small smile. We'll do it, said. Send us the coordinates and all available data on the stranded ship. We are launching immediately. You, Commander, I am transmitting the data now, and Commander, the galaxy will be watching. Communication ended, turned to his crew. You heard the man. This is our chance to show everyone what humans can really do. Let us make it count. His engine came to life. Within minutes, they were breaking orbit and heading toward the stranded transport. Behind them, news feeds across the galaxy picked up the story. Human ship responds to rescue call. The same species that broke testing equipment was now trying to save lives. Into his command chair and watched as the planet grew larger. The gravity readings were extreme. Most species would be crushed or immobilized by those conditions. But humans had evolved on Earth, where survival meant adapting to anything. Gravity hit them like a physical wall. Felt his body press down into his command chair as the horizon descended into the planet's crying embrace. Around him, crew members grunted with effort, their bodies working twice as hard just to breathe and move. Gravity at 2.8 standard, the navigator called out, his voice strained, agreeing to 3.1 as we descend. Bees could barely function at 2 standard gravities. At 3, they would be completely immobilized. But humans had evolved on Earth, a world with slightly higher gravity than the galactic standard. Their bodies were built with excess capacity, designed to handle more than necessary because Earth's unpredictability demand. It's on the stranded vessel, asked. Did the sensor operator replied. 400 kilometers ahead. Orbit is decaying faster than projected. They have made 2 hours before atmospheric entry. Can they survive entry? Sir, the ship's heat shields are damaged. If they hit atmosphere, they will burn up. Helm, bring us alongside. Engineering, prepare boarding tubes. Medical, get ready for injured crew members. Eisen moved through the crying gravity like a swimmer pulling through thick water. Her engine screamed with effort, burning fuel at twice the normal rate. But she held together. Human engineering, like human biology, was built with margins of safety that other species considered wasteful. A transport came into view. It was a merchant guild vessel, the kind that carried cargo and crew between systems. Normally it would look sleek and maintained. Now it looked like a broken toy, one engine completely destroyed, the hull with damage from whatever had caused the failure. Full life signs detected, the sensor operator confirmed. 23 crew members in 3 separate compartments. Some of the internal gravity plating is still functioning, but barely. Can we dock? Docking ports are damaged. We will have to use magnetic clamps and cut through. 2, that is your job. Take a team and get those people out. You have 90 minutes. Already moving, she grabbed Jake and 3 other crew members. They suited up in heavy-duty equipment designed for extreme conditions. The suits added weight, but that did not matter to humans who were already stronger than expected. Crossed through the boarding tube and attached magnetic cutters to the transport's hull. The gravity pulled at them hustily, trying to drag them down. Jake worked the cutting tools with steady hands, his movements precise despite the crushing force. At the transport, they found chaos. The merchant guild crew were from different species, and the high gravity affected each of them differently. Some were unconscious. Others were awake but unable to move. A few were injured from when the ship had first been damaged. Knee stretchers called back to the horizon, and medical support. Several crew members are in bad condition. arrived with medical supplies. She moved through the damaged ship quickly, assessing injuries and sabotaging the worst cases. The high gravity made everything harder, but humans could still function. They could still think clearly and move with purpose while other species could barely breathe. This group of rescue crew members came across on Stratus. They were the grayskin species that often worked security positions. Even their tough biology could not handle 3.1 gravities for extended periods. They were conscious but weak, grateful to be pulled from the dying ship. 10 more to go, Jake reported. Some of them are in sections that lost life support. We need to move fast. It became their enemy. The orbit continued to decay. Every minute brought the transport closer to atmospheric entry and death. Watched the numbers on his screen, calculating and recalculating their chances. Enter, we have a problem, the navigator said. The transport's orbit is destabilizing faster than predicted. If we stay docked much longer, we will be pulled down with it. How long do we have? 40 minutes, maybe less. The Channel 2, you heard that. 40 minutes to get everyone out. Understood, Commander. We are working as fast as we can. Damaged transport, the rescue team pushed themselves harder. They found 4 crew members trapped in a section that had lost gravity plating entirely. The rescue crew members were small, from a species called the. They weighed almost nothing normally, but in 3.1 gravities, they could not eat sand. Simply picked up 2 of them, one in each arm, and carried them back to the boarding tube. It would have been impossible for most species. Even the strong would struggle to move with that much weight in such high gravity. But Jake did it, and he did not complain. He just went back for the others. Found 3 injured crew members in what remained of the bridge. They were a species known for their persistence and determination. Even they could not function in these conditions. Helen stabilized their injuries as best she could, then called for more strength. Rescue crew members came across one by one. 20 rescued. 21, 22. Each transfer took precious minutes. Each minute brought them closer to the point of no return. This crew member located, roared. But we have a complication. She is trapped under collapsed structure. We need cutting tools. There's no time, said, watching the orbit decay on his screen. We have 15 minutes before we have to disconnect. We better work fast, replied. Jake tacked the collapsed structure with cutting tools and bare hands. The metal was heavy, reinforced, designed to withstand ship operations. But it had not been designed to withstand humans who refused to quit. Braced his feet and lifted a beam that should have required 3 people and mechanical assistance. His face turned red with effort, and his arms shook, but the beam moved, slid underneath, and pulled the trapped crew member free. She was unconscious but alive. He hit her back across the boarding tube just as gave the order to disconnect. The magnetic clamps released, and the horizon pulled away from the dying transport. Below them, the damaged ship continued its fall toward the plant, now empty of crew but full of cargo that no longer mattered. Suddenly, as the transport hit atmosphere, it burned bright orange and red, breaking apart into pieces that scattered across the sky. 23 crew members would have died in that fire. Instead, they were safe aboard the horizon, being treated by medical teams. Crew members accounted for, Helen reported. Several serious injuries, but everyone will survive. Allowed himself to breathe, they had done it. Against crushing gravity and impossible time limits, they had saved every single person aboard that ship. Us back to Station Apex, he ordered. Nice and easy, our passengers have been through enough today. Getting back was slower. The rescue crew members needed time to recover, and was not going to push his own crew after what they had just accomplished. They arrived at Station Apex 6 hours late. Station commander met them personally at the docking port. The large looked at with an expression that was difficult to read. Saved them all, he said simply. That was the job, replied. That was beyond the job. My people could not have done what you did today. The gravity alone would have killed most of our rescue teams. The time pressure would have forced us to make impossible choices about who to save first. But you went in and brought everyone out. We had the right equipment and the right crew. More than that, you had determination and the physical capability to back it up. Paused. I watched the rescue operations. I saw your crew working in conditions that should have crushed them. I saw Lieutenant lift structural components that require mechanical assistance for my people. I saw Dr. Carter treating patients while most species would have been barely able to stand. Just did what needed doing, Jake said, joining them at the docking port. To him, 3 days ago you broke our testing equipment. The galaxy became frightened of what humans could do. Today you showed us what humans choose to do with their strength. That changed things. The next several days, the story of the rescue spread across the galaxy just as fast as the story of the broken testing equipment had. But this time, the response was different. Species that had been afraid started asking different questions. Not what can humans do to us, but what can humans do for us? Guild issued a formal statement thanking humanity for the rescue. They announced new insurance rates for human crews, but this time the rates were lower, not higher. Humans were considered excellent rescue and emergency response personnel. Government, whose sit-in had been trapped under the collapsed structure, sent a personal message to Jake. They wanted to discuss joint training programs for disaster response. Their culture valued persistence, and they saw in humans a kindred spirit. The hegemony changed their tone. Instead of challenging humanity to prove their strength, they proposed a cooperative military training exchange. If humans were naturally strong and persistent, and were naturally tough and disciplined, perhaps together they could learn from each other. Requested a private meeting within Helen. They met in a quiet conference room aboard Station Apex. The scientists looked different now. The fear and confusion were gone, replaced by something that looked like... Been thinking about what happened, she said, both with the testing equipment and with the rescue. I spent my career believing that understanding something meant being able to predict and control it. But humans taught me that some things cannot be fully predicted or controlled. They can only be understood in context. What context? Helen asked. Context of choice? Yes, Lieutenant can generate incredible force, but what matters is what he chooses to do with that force. He could have used it to threaten or destroy. Instead, he used it to save lives. That is not biology, that is... Slowly, so what happens now with your research? Start over, not completely, but I will rebuild my models to account for species that do not fit standard patterns. Humans are not the only unusual species in the galaxy. You are just the first one that forced me to admit my models were incomplete. She smiled slightly. It is humbling, but also exciting. There is still so much to learn. Slayer received orders from Earth Command. The Horizon was being assigned to a new mission. They would work with a joint task force focused on search and rescue operations in extreme environments. Ships from multiple species would participate, but the Horizon would lead missions that required high-gravity operations or unusual physical demand. It was exactly what Jake had suggested, using human strength not to threaten but to help, showing the galaxy what humans chose to do with their capabilities. Prepared to depart Station Apex, stood on the bridge and thought about everything that had happened. They had come here to prove that humans belonged in the galactic community. They had broken testing equipment, shattered scientific models, and frightened species across the galaxy. In the end, they had also saved 23 lives. They had shown that strength without purpose was just numbers on a screen, but strength combined with determination and the choice to help made something more. It made hope. Galaxy would adjust. New safety standards would be written. New equipment would be designed. New theories would be developed to explain how humans could exceed every prediction and expectation. Knew the real answer was simpler than any scientific model. Humans could do impossible things because Earth had never given them the luxury of knowing what impossible meant. They pushed against every limit because pushing back was what kept them alive. They refused to quit because quitting meant extinction. Now, in the larger galaxy, those same traits that evolution had burned into human biology were finding new purposes. Not breaking systems, but building new ones. Not proving dominance, but providing help. Not conquering, but contribute. Set course for the mission coordinates, ordered. Set commander, ready when you are. Around his bridge at his crew. Jake sat at his station looking calm and ready, checked her engineering readouts with practiced efficiency. Helen reviewed medical protocols for the species they might encounter. We're just humans doing their jobs, nothing failed by their own standards. But to the galaxy, they were proof that sometimes the most important strength was not the ability to break things, but the determination to fix them. He goes out, Sid. His engines powered up, and the ship slipped away from Station Apex into the darks beyond. Behind them, the galaxy watched and wondered and slowly began to understand. It had broken the system, but maybe the system had needed breaking. Made comfortable certainty was less valuable than uncomfortable truth. Maybe knowing that there were still surprises waiting in the universe was more important than pretending everything could be predicted and controlled. Maybe, just maybe, the real experiment had never been about finding human limits. It had been about discovering what humanity would choose to do when no one could stop them. Chose to help, that single choice changed everything. Hence, prepare for high-gravity insertion, he announced over the ship-wide intercom. This is going to be rough, but we have trained for this. We can do this. Let us show the galaxy what humanity is really made of. Horizon dove toward the planet, allowed himself a small smile. The galaxy was scared of human strength. Maybe it was time to show them that strength could be used for something other than destruction. Maybe Jake was right. Maybe the answer was not to hide what humans could do, but to use it in ways that helped instead of threat. Maybe it was time to change the story. Being sent across the galaxy, news of the test results was spreading like fire through dry grass, a morning every government and scientific body would know. Eddie had wanted to prove they belonged in the galactic community. They had wanted respect and recognition. We're about to get both, but not in the way anyone had expected. The machine began to make a sound that was not an alarm. It was the sound of metal under stress, the sound of systems operating beyond their design parameters. Realized with growing horror that they were about to find out what happened when human determination met equipment that had never been built to handle it. She looked at them, and some silent communication passed between them. We'll continue, Doctor said. She turned back to her controls with an expression that finally recognized. It was anticipation. Doctor was excited about something, and that made uneasy. Testing chamber, Jake waited patiently for the next instruction. He had no idea that he had just done something unexpected. He had no idea that the numbers displayed on the screens were beginning to break their carefully constructed models. He definitely had no idea that he was about to change everything.